Tape 2, Side A, 7 Minutes in Heaven.
I raced down the stairs wrapped in a damp towel, my bare feet leaving a trail of cold puddles from my dip in the rooftop water tank.
Hey, you're making a mess.
That's nothing compared to the mess waiting in my office. I burst through the door to find Ruby deep in conversation with...
Surprise! I'm not dead.
Dorito? Impossible. I saw you fall down a 40-foot mine shaft in Peach Springs, Arizona.
Yet here I am, standing in your filthy office while you drip on the linoleum. What'd you do, fall into the wishing well while you were praying for a clue?
No, that is not an explanation. I killed you. By accident, but I killed you.
Guess you can add it to the list of things you're bad at.
Where have you been?
Where have you been? Micro Machine over here told me you took a dip in the water tower.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to scrub your stench out of my life for a whole year, and now I'm gonna have to start from scratch. So tell me, how are things in the 7th circle of hell, or whichever one is reserved for liars?
Which type of liar? According to Dante's Inferno, the 8th circle is for fraud, while the 9th is intended for those who have committed treason.
Then Dorito belongs in 8.5.
There are no half circles in hell, numbskull.
Well, I don't know, maybe there's a stairwell. Listen, I don't care if you've been living in hell or the airport hojo. I don't want anything to do with you. Get out of my office and stay away from my case.
Your case? This is my case. I got a hand-delivered invitation.
Let me guess, hand-delivered by a brick through the window?
Yeah, actually. Damn.
Looks like the OBMs are doubling up on their part-time detectives.
Sorry to butt in, but who is this? Why were you in Arizona? And why did you try and fail to kill them?
This is Dorito, my old partner, in every sense of the word. Arizona was our last case. As for the last one...
Campbell's a coward and I paid for it.
Hey, that is not what happened. Okay, so we're both working the same case. Why are you here?
I got a request, and before you say no...
No.
I need to borrow some of our old case files.
No!
Oh, come on.
Ruby, can you translate no into a language that Dorito understands?
Non, yet, me.
She's
me,
quick, I'll give her that.
Please don't call me she. My pronouns are it, that, nine, onyo,
Okay, thank you,
me.
Ruby, that's enough. To answer your question, Dorito, no, you're not borrowing nothing. Now get out!
Still bent on sabotaging my career.
Me? When you disappeared, you nearly got me kicked out of the Part-Time Detective Guild. You know, on account of murdering my partner?
That's right, keep passing the buck. You know, Ruby, he was always dead weight. I did all the dirty work while he played 20 questions and mumbled into his tape recorder.
He is usually speaking into a microphone.
Aha, dirty work is right. Ruby, Dorito almost got us kicked off of every case we ever worked on because they kept stealing from the crime scenes. And the witnesses.
It's called collecting evidence.
Yeah, cash-filled wallets are not evidence.
They can be.
Almost never.
At least I got results. If he had it his way, Ruby, we'd still be on our first case. A meshless net could catch more clues than this putz.
I have a light touch, and I stand by it.
I'm about to give you a light touch to the jaw.
Enough. No more input. I may be a royalty-free text-to-speech AI-powered robot, but I'm not a couples counselor. I'm going for a walk. Come find me on the other side of whatever climax you're building up to.
Ew. Fine. Sorry. Go take a break.
Butchulator lip jazz banshees. Don't you drag me into your backseat bingo. I'm not even getting paid.
Why do they talk like...
I programmed them to act like a pre- and post-war Lynchian Girl Friday with a touch of Johnny Five, but I don't think either of us really know what those references mean.
They've got attitude. I like it.
I'm sorry, but I can't help you. This case could change my career.
What career?
Dorito, this is my chance to go full-time.
Not if I do it first.
Fine! You want to fight? How about a friendly wager?
Now you're talking.
I share my old case files.
Our old case files.
My old case files, but only because then, when I solve this case first, you can't make any excuses.
How dare you? Part-time detective tip number 8.
Excuses are for leaving the dinner table, not saving the day. Ugh! Here's the deal. When I solve this case first and go full-time, you have to quit the biz forever.
You got it, because that'll never happen, even with your battery-powered butler. And when I solve this case first, because I will, you have to quit the biz forever.
With pleasure, because I'm gonna crack this thing like my sternum on a rainy day.
On account of your child gymnastics injury.
I could have been the next Gary Strug.
You wish. Oh, and stay out of my way. Any interference, and you're immediately disqualified. If I so much as catch a whiff.
You can't catch whiffs, Dorito. You have congenital smell blindness.
It's called anosmia.
Oh, do you feel smarter when you use that fancy term? Anyway, fine. You don't interfere with me. I don't interfere with you.
No killing me either. Once was enough.
Ugh.
Watch it.
There's my spare key to the storage unit. You can look, but do not take anything. And lock it when you're done.
Part-time detective tip number 31.
Always triple check the lock to the evidence room and have the device inspected biannually by a certified locksmith. Oh, I hate you. No, I hate you. Scram! Beat it. Get? Kiss me.
Smell you later, sucker.
You can't smell. You have congenital anosmia. Hey, my wallet's gone. Damn it, Dorito! Ruby, where'd you... you're right there. Were you eavesdropping?
I don't need to be near you to hear what you say. I can hear everything through your walkie-talkie watch.
What? I wear this thing to the bathroom.
Anyway, whoever wins your little contest should treat themselves to some therapy.
I don't need help dealing with Dorito, thank you very much. Unless you can tell me how to permanently wipe them from my memory.
Human brains cannot be reformatted, only destroyed. Would you like
No,
me?
good lord. Listen, I gotta go. There's an OBM rally across town at the old mall. And hey, stay out of sleep mode. I'm gonna need your help later.
I had a hot date with a Colossus Mark 1, but I guess I can cancel.
You have a date?
By the way, I've updated the firmware on your watch. If your heart rate ever stops entirely or goes beyond 180 BPM, I'll receive a notification.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, you have a date?
The Colossus was the world's first programmable electronic and digital computer. It was a joke.
But do you date? Like, can robots, have... Forget it. We can talk about it later.
Do we have to?
Blushing, I raced to the curb just in time to see the back end of the bus. I could have sworn I saw the driver flick me off in his rearview mirror. Are those metal crickets? Cicadas? I spun around to see not a super brute, but a surly broad, hanging upside down from the top of the bus shelter like a human bat. Her long Xena warrior princess-like hair hung like drapes from beneath a velvet waistcoat that almost completely obscured her face. Picture Cousin It, Uncle Sam Dracula, and one hell of a steam mop. On a folding card table in front of her was an old typewriter with which she was presently engaged, hence the clacking. Tattered jacket, outdated machinery, and a lifelong dependence on public transit? This woman writes for Canadian television. Next to the typewriter was a small tent cart with a chilling declaration. Will write for blood. I flicked on my recorder. Part-time detective case note number 31. I'm speaking to a television writer who is obsessed with vampires. Hi, could you please introduce yourself?
You can call me Verna von Helsing. And yes, I absolutely love vampires. Love writing about them, love reading about them, love watching them, love listening to a podcast about them. Give me all the vampires.
All I wanted to ask was how Verna was able to write upside down. But then I remembered part-time detective tip number 2. Necessity is the mother of invention and the stepchild of a Canadian media industry paycheck. So when did this start and what interests you the most about vampires?
This is going to sound possibly insane, but I really can't remember a time I wasn't obsessed with vampires. It became a very noticeable thing, probably, let's say 2008, 2009, because this was the era that True Blood was new, which obviously I absolutely adored that show. And also I was just discovering Buffy the Vampire Slayer for the first time. It was off the air by then, but back in the day, we used to binge watch boxed DVD sets, and that's what I did. Maybe the earliest I can remember seeing a vampire would be The Nightmare Before Christmas. They have a little band of vampires, which I have action figures of in a box somewhere.
So if you can cast your mind back possibly, what do you think appealed to you as a child about vampires?
I think vampires in particular, I mean, there's always sort of the dark and the unknown, right? Vampires, unlike other undead creatures such as zombies, we tend to see them as very sort of high class, almost aspirational creatures in some cases. And this is often in their portrayal used as a means of seduction and of finding victims, is the fact that they're so able to draw you in. They just have this raw magnetism about them. And that applies in the real world too, in terms of how they impact people who love vampires. There's just something so interesting and mysterious. Vampires also often have some sort of connection to animals. Like, obviously, they can turn into bats. There are, in different mythologies and different versions, sometimes they can transform into other creatures, which is I can't think of another word, seductive about them. They're just so they just draw you in.
Well, they also tend to be very rich. Like, I'm thinking
Yes.
Dracula lives in that castle. In Interview with a Vampire, they always have some like gorgeous New Orleans estate or
Oh
something
yeah.
like that. Are all vampires rich and capitalist, or are there middle class vampires too?
There are middle class vampires, and there's definitely examples of those. One of my favorite examples, God, I can't remember the character's name now, but they did a mini arc on True Blood about a vampire who was literally struggling with this and that he felt he didn't fit into the mold of a vampire. He had chronic illness. He was, I believe, a middle-aged man, like, maybe not traditionally attractive, and how he felt like he didn't fit into the aesthetic of or idea of what a vampire should be. As I said, we often see them as aspirational. So, yes, they are often rich, very intellectual, like in comparison to other undead creatures such as a zombie, which we tend to think of as like feral and animalistic. Vampires are almost us, but elevated in most portrayals, or at least I would at least say in many portrayals. There are also definitely feral vampires.
Right, right. Do you think it's the kind of thing where it's like Mensa, like you need to be smart to get in? Or is there a training program like once you're in, maybe they can level you up?
I think there is definitely a bit of a selection process. Maybe Mensa is run by vampires. Honestly, who knows?
Oh.
Wouldn't put it past them.
Okay, okay. I'm kind of stuck on an Interview with a Vampire in that something I recognize as an inherently queer text in that
Oh God, yes.
it's two people with oral fixations who go to party in New Orleans. They move in together. They raise this like adopted doll-like daughter, obsessively discuss interior decorating, and then in Act 3 they take a mini break to Paris and spend all their time cruising people and going to the theater.
Oh yeah, this is absolutely like a gay midlife crisis.
100%. Are there any straight vampires? Do vampires have a sexuality, or is there just anyone with hot blood?
There's no such thing as a heterosexual vampire. I think in general we tend to see vampires very pansexual or bisexual, sexually fluid, sexually open, because they're already living outside of so many societal norms. Why would
Hmm.
they constrain themselves to the societal norms surrounding sexual orientation?
Yeah. Yeah. So then would you say it's not that these vampires are turning people queer, so to speak, but they're allowing them to sort of express themselves in ways they were afraid to before, but inherently were?
Very much the latter. Yes, I don't believe,
Okay.
vampires are turning you into vampires. Sure, that's how vampires get made, but vampires aren't turning anyone gay. They might be responsible for your gay awakening, but look, all kinds of things can be responsible for one's gay awakening. I don't think
Uh-huh.
that we have any right to pin that exclusively on vampires.
I see. What about, do vampires tend to go for adults? In Interview with a Vampire, they also go for children. Is there an age minimum for this kind of horseplay?
In terms of turning or in terms of eating?
You answer as freely as you like.
In terms of eating, I think it depends on the vampire. There's definitely some vampires who we've seen in across different media who will kill indiscriminately. Then we also see some who have difficulty killing humans at all, let alone what the age is. So there really is a spectrum of morals there. In terms of turning them, the idea of turning a child into a vampire being forbidden, we've seen in different media, of course, Interview with the Vampire is the first thing that comes to mind. It also ends up being a problem in Twilight, the Twilight series, several times. Of course, that's
There are a few problems in the Twilight series, but go on.
just a few, but that is definitely something we've seen across different vampire media. But then again, also, child vampires can be really scary. Abigail came out this year, and it was a rockin' good time. Absolutely adored that movie. And the kid is terrifying. I don't know. I would be pretty angry if I was a 200-year-old genius trapped in a child's body. I'd get
Yeah.
pretty frustrated.
Yeah, 100%. But then also you could just absolutely crush anything that had a age restriction, like a child pageant or Mensa Junior.
That's also true.
And you're the expert here, so I'm just asking questions. I know that vampires have some fairly obvious tells, like sharp teeth, maybe the ruffled feathers under their suit jacket, the 30-ounce Yeti mug full of blood. What are some of the ways that vampires pass as humans and disguise themselves? How do they walk among us?
Well, because they're humanoid, right? They were formerly human. They generally still look like us. Again, there are examples of more feral or sort of monstrous looking vampires, but generally we tend to think of them as walking among us. And that is considered to be one of the scariest things about them is that you really don't know. The other thing, of course, being that they mostly conduct their business at night and in a world where everything is 24/7 and, queer people, our lives are at night. I don't know many queer early birds. I know they exist. I just don't know a lot of
I
them.
am actually an early bird.
Really
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah, I love a good
Um,
morning.
oh God, no. If I go to bed on the same calendar day I woke up, something's wrong.
Okay, let's go to the teeth for a second. Still talking about tells. Are they always like that? Do they engage when they're about to bite? Are they like those running shoes kids have where you can like kick the roller skates into action and then make them go away?
We've seen both in different interpretations. Sometimes they are always vampiric, especially if we're talking about the more sort of feral, monstrous interpretation of them. Very often we see retractable fangs, especially in screen media, because frankly, it's easier to shoot if they aren't having to wear fake teeth all the time. It really depends on the interpretation. I'm a fan of the retractable fangs personally, because again, it adds another layer of a vampire could be anybody. If someone is walking around with giant canines and, thirsting every time someone puts on a band-aid, that's a little obvious. So,
Is that part of the fun, like the or I use fun loosely, but the ability to infiltrate is a big part of vampires' appeal, do you think? Like a zombie can't blend in with a crowd, but a vampire can.
very much so. And that's a recurring thing that we see from the earliest days of vampire media. If you look back at the old short stories and novels, that sort of solidified the traits that we associate with vampires. And even before those stories came about, vampires were folk legend, especially in Europe and Eastern Europe, although different iterations of vampiric creatures exist across a variety of world mythologies. And, what are folk legends but ways to scare kids and keep people inside and stuff like that?
Hmm.
It's a way of imparting morals of society. We are supposed to be afraid of these things. So it was very much used as a way of controlling people. And Carmilla being an excellent example of why you shouldn't trust people. The vampire could be anybody. Also, warning men away from sexual pleasure. But again, I could go off for a long time on that tangent.
Yeah, I'm sure you could.
It's part of their appeal and also just part of how they are able to ensure their survival is their ability to blend in.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So it's sort of a Darwinian thing as well. Like you've said, vampires, lore can be found almost in any country far, far back in time. Is there kind of an agreed upon OG vampire origin story, like a sort of a patient zero of vampirism? I've read some texts that say the devil might be considered the first vampire.
Yeah, I think depending on which iteration you're looking at, they might be also really associated with hell, and Satan. I don't know if there's an original vampire. People tend to think of Dracula. In fact, it's not Dracula. Carmilla actually predates Dracula, and
Mm.
there are a number of short stories. Polidori's short story, I believe, or Polidori, I believe his name which was actually a continuation of an unfinished story by Lord Byron in the early 1800s. In terms of, who's the OG vampire, I don't know. I think you'd have to ask one.
Okay, I'll keep looking. Do you have a favorite vampire? Mine is probably Count Chocula.
Oh, incredible choice.
Yeah, thanks.
That is a really, really good question. Currently, I am absolutely enamored with Interview with the Vampire. So
Yeah.
both Louis and Lestat. You know what? Claudia. Claudia.
Explain who that is.
Claudia is just such a badass. Neither Louis nor Lestat can hold a candle.
So you like a bit of a naughty vampire.
I like a badass vampire. I
Yeah.
like I recognize that I am an apex predator and also I have an intellect far beyond what humans could ever hope to possess simply by virtue of being alive so long. I mean, I'm really revealing myself here as a nerd. I know, huge surprise, but think about how many books you could read if
Oh
you
my
were going
God.
to live forever. You would be
Yeah.
so smart. And, let's be real, I would still be playing catch up, but I wouldn't be playing catch up on movies and TV shows. You would just,
That does actually suggest asked that Mensa would be all vampires, because think how much time you'd have to prepare for that test, right? Or any secret society that has like an educational test component.
You know what? I'm gonna out myself here. I am a former member of Mensa.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I didn't renew my membership,
Wait,
but
is that the only way out? You just have to stop paying?
yeah, I guess because I stopped paying and they stopped sending me communications. And now I'm almost tempted to renew it or see if I can renew it just to do some recon for you.
Oh my God, that's fascinating. What's it like? Okay, I have so many questions about that, but maybe another time.
Maybe another time.
So, in popular conversation, speaking about monster lore, we often get it wrong, and then those myths reify themselves. A good example is Frankenstein, who is actually the doctor, not the monster.
Oh, yeah.
So, is there a common myth to do with vampires that you wish people would just get right?
I think what I want a lot of people to understand, or the thing that I think of, is things like, okay, decapitation, setting them on fire, a stake through the heart. Yes, these things will generally work, but you have to remember most of those things would kill a human being too. Personally, I'm always a fan of whenever vampires in whatever story you're currently reading, watching, whatever, dispel one of those myths. In the Interview with the Vampire movie, the first thing Malloy does is ask Louis a bunch of questions about, like, what about a stake through the heart or garlic and stuff? And he says that's all fake. Whereas he actually gives a reason that they have to sleep in coffins, which is that they sleep during the day. They literally need to protect themselves from the light.
Right.
So I'm just a fan of that. When the vampire within the story dispels some kind of common myth, I always find that kind of cute and entertaining.
That's a very sort of postmodern Mensa kind of answer.
Just put myself on blast.
Here's my final question. So I've read certain studies or, websites, they're probably just websites, that say mosquitoes prefer certain blood types.
Yep.
Do vampires prefer certain blood types?
In some media, they absolutely do. I can definitely think of some vampire media where someone spits it out. They're like, oh, B negative or something like that.
There's one they hate, like Crystal Pepsi or something.
Yeah. There's also an Interview with the Vampire, the film. Louis
Yeah.
talks about how Lestat has a preferred type of victim. I don't think he says it has to do with the taste of the blood necessarily. But it might be more about the hunt, but he tends to go after certain types of people for certain types of feeding.
Yeah.
So that's definitely out there. Worth knowing your blood type. So in case you're ever confronted with a vampire, you can be like, oh, actually, I'm B negative. Like, you don't want this.
Turn them away, turn them away. Thank you so much. This has been indispensable.
Werner grabbed my forearm, the one where I'd written Caroline's number, and bared me a mighty set of incisors. I snatched it back and gave her a quarter to feast on instead. She flipped me the bird. It's okay. Keep the change.
Thank you.
My final destination was the OBM rally across town, but I planned to hit a few stops along the way. The first was St. Benedict's, a breakfast place housed in an old church with a very popular drag brunch. All that vampire talk had made me hungry. And the OBMs had a long-standing beef with the drag community. If there was anything to it, I wanted to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Coincidentally, today's drag show was horse-themed. I was led to my table amidst large bales of hay, dangling saddles, and a deconstructed combine harvester that glistened with tetanus. Though the decor made it almost impossible to see the stage, I appreciated the commitment.
Y'all ready to dressage?
Alongside crisp 20s, diners held out handfuls of wet chestnuts for the girls to graze on. The queen currently on stage, dressed as a top-heavy Clydesdale, somberly trotted to a slow carnivalesque dirge.
Can I take your order?
One soft poached egg, one scoop of cottage cheese, and a raisin on top of each so they look like eyes, please.
The optometrist. Coming right up.
I'm gonna go to the store and I'm buying some chips.
Hey, I know this song. What's his name? That gothy Australian guy?
Yarmayahu, the legendary vampiric monster found in southeastern Australian Aboriginal mythology.
What?
The toothless monster is said to live in fig trees, drops down into resting travelers, and drains their blood through suckers on its hands and feet.
Sorry?
Then swallows its victim and vomits them out, leaving them slightly shorter than they were before, and transformed into a Yarmayahu themselves. You know, the dark cycle continues.
That's who's singing this song?
Oh, this song. That's Nick Cave.
Nick Cave. Noted. I watched a few more numbers through the straw while I finished my breakfast. After the Clydesdale came a Frisian, a Welsh mountain pony, and a particularly magnetic Tennessee walker. Tennessee. I tried Caroline's phone again for the 100th time.
Hi, you've reached Caroline Moore reporting for WOKE Middle Tennessee. If you have a tip, leave a voicemail. If you've got a boat, send a text because I am trying to be on the lake this summer. Trust me, I'm a catch.
Damn it. I paid for my breakfast, then ducked around to the back of the church where the girls got changed. The Tennessee Walker was taking off our high-heeled horseshoes when I entered the sacristy. I flicked on my recorder. Part-Time Detective Case Note number 33. I'm speaking to an especially progressive horse whisperer. Popular wisdom from what I'm hearing right now is that drag queens are obsessed with libraries.
Libraries are places that I go very occasionally when I need arcane knowledge that is not founded on the internet anymore. Like sometimes I might go if I need like a very specific piece of music, sheet music, or
Like to sing or play?
probably to sing, like if I was looking for that, but I don't really do auditions anymore because I hate musical theater now, so I don't do that stuff. And then, especially back in the day, I was doing some like historical interpretation stuff because, you know, CanCon, that's how you work as an actor in Canada. I would like dig into some historical archives. Like I tried to find this one thing about, I don't know, Sir John A. Macdonald had letters sent to him by this queer admirer, which is so silly.
Quick note if you're from abroad, Sir John A. Macdonald was Canada's first prime minister and looks alarmingly like Margaret Atwood.
And I went to the archive and found the letters, and I still have them.
That's fantastic. This was at a library.
Yeah, I had to go to a specific library and look on the little microfiche and like pull it
Yeah.
all up. And the interesting thing though is that he kept those letters. You know, either maybe he just wanted to keep them just in case, or
Right.
maybe he enjoyed it. I don't know.
Got a little stir.
Yeah.
So, from what you've described so far, it sounds like your work at the library is incredibly dry.
Oh yeah, totally.
Do you have an active library card right now?
Not at all. No, I've had library cards in the past, but I don't go to the library that often anymore. I mean, everything is online.
Do you ever go to the library with the intention of meeting someone or talking to someone?
No, like I think that's the number one rule at the library to like be quiet.
Right.
I'm pretty sure, as far as I can tell, people are pretty quiet at the library, and I tend to follow that rule. And I don't know, and I'm kind of introverted anyways. I don't know.
I mean, this is just not what I've been told at all or what I'm expecting at all.
Oh,
Do you go in drag?
in drag? Well, I know some queens have, you know, done story times. I've never been invited to a library to do a story time. No, never in drag, only, you know, in jeans for the most part.
When you go to the library, you've got a bit of a mission.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have any interest in reading stories to other people at the library, or do you just kind of want to mind your own business?
Oh yeah, I think I pretty much don't really go to libraries in general. I just have distinct memories of like walking around libraries, like scowling at people, being like, ugh, why are they sitting in the one cubicle where I want to sit so I can be alone and read this stupid book so I can go home and go across the street to Pizza and get the pizza that I actually want.
Right.
That's my reward for trying to engage with intellectual things.
So, if you had your way, there would be even less people at libraries because it sounds like they're taking your seats.
Well, I really think, you know, they should offer more frozen yogurt or like,
Right, like a snack section.
yeah, like I know it's just there's not enough to do. Maybe like add an amusement coaster or like,
It would have to be a very quiet one.
why is there no smoking room also? Like, don't people smoke when they read? Like, isn't that kind of the vibe? Like, you have a book in your hand and you're like, ooh, smoking.
Like a pipe or like a cigarette in one of those long holders.
Vapes, definitely long holders. That they should definitely have those available because really, people don't read anymore. You just do it for the Instagram photo.
I see. So all the books could be empty,
Yeah,
just hollowed out, or notebooks.
yeah. Like I went over to this one lady's place. I swear she was rich. She had too much space in her house. It was her library, she called it. The entire room was filled with empty coffee table books from chapters that closed.
Oh, they were like real estate staging books, you mean?
Yeah, it was a complete facade. And there's like, welcome to my library. It was like, your library of nothing. There is no
Oh.
knowledge here.
So if anyone's tricking someone at a library or up to no good, it might
Rich people, rich people.
it's rich people. I made a mental note to keep my eye out for a rich woman with coffee table books.
Because poor people go to libraries, which is a great thing about libraries, which is why I think we think about it the more is like a place for people who don't have access to a computer or internet stuff. They can go and have a place to interact. Because where else are you going to go at this point?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of indoor public spaces anymore.
No. So meeting places for that kind of event and the sharing of knowledge, that's really important.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's also a place where the rich people keep their thumb on us and say like, you can only know this. We're not going to let you know that.
They're deciding what books make it there. Let's go back to the smoking room. I think by and large, we found as a society that a glass door doesn't keep a lot out. You know, if I think back to like a coffee time or something,
Oh.
the smoking rooms, you know, if you were within 20 feet of a smoking room, it still smelled like smoke.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think that could damage the books.
Oh, but I mean, it gives them character, really. And
Oh,
you know, like you want to open up the book and just get that like, this is from 1925.
this smells like Virginia Slims.
Exactly. You know,
Okay.
very specific. I mean, in cigarettes, I don't know. Aren't they kind of a thing of the past? Are they getting more popular these days? I don't know.
No, I think mostly kids are moving to vaping and cocaine.
Yeah, so things are dusty and they kind of smell of cherries. And that's how you can tell when the thing is from. You know, like if it smells like tobacco, it's
Right. So, like, to assist the librarians to kind of date the materials, they could allow all kinds of drug and substance use in the library.
yeah, I think it can really enhance the reading experience also, especially if you're into esoteric books like, I don't know, James Joyce. Like, I would not recommend reading James Joyce if you're not on LSD.
Okay.
One sec, Hillary. Ruby, tell me something about Joyce.
DeWitt.
Oh, that's a good one. No, James Joyce.
The open-ended form of Joyce's novels has made them a site of constant reinterpretation.
For example?
If I had $1 for every graduate thesis about the homoerotic subtext of Ulysses, I'd be a very rich royalty-free machine, which would be nice, as you don't pay me squat.
Good lord. Sorry, Hillary. Back to the libraries.
You talked about some kind of ride section. I mean, I guess as publicly funded entities, this is starting to sound expensive.
That's true. Well, you know,
You could get a donor.
taking care of your people is expensive.
Right. Right.
I don't know.
You can't put a price on literacy, I suppose.
Um,
Okay. We can come back to that. So, kind of what I'm getting if we sew this up is that you could kind of really, as they exist now, take or leave a library.
Yeah, I think they are, you know, evolving. I think, you know, paper is really important for historical reasons and also because you can't trust technology always, but they're evolving and they are information hubs. And what that even means in the world today is, I don't know, can I even trust a library anymore? I have trust issues with everything these days. Everything I see online, I'm like, I don't know, can I trust that? So I go to a library and I'm like, I mean, I don't know, this guy wrote this book like in 1900, like he's racist. Can I trust that? Like, I don't think so.
Well, you've given me so much to think about.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, I appreciate it. Hopefully there's frozen yogurt at the library next time because maybe I'll head over there.
If you find where that one is, let me know.
Hillary finished getting dressed and headed out for her next set.
Category is Night of 1,000 Snaffle Bits.
One of my best leads just dried up. Despite reading being fundamental, it turned out drag queens hated libraries. Hey, Ruby?
Yes, laser lips.
Okay, let's recalibrate. Johnny 5 at 2 and a bit of Breathless from Dick Tracy.
I get sick when you eat.
That's better. Listen, I'm sorry about what Hillary said.
That she hates music theater.
No. I get that one. She said we can't trust technology.
She said we can't always trust technology.
Right. Did you take offense to that? Can you take offense?
She was right.
Huh?
I'm only a conduit for existing information, and that information may be corrupted. In this way, I'm no different than humans.
Excuse me?
For what?
I'm not just a conduit. I take in information and then I synthesize it through my own unique lens. That's what makes me me.
What makes your lens so unique?
I am part of all that I have met.
That's from Ulysses.
No, I just thought of that now.
If anything makes you human, it's your ego. Humans take everything personally, but they're not unique.
Ouch.
So, no, I wasn't offended by the drag queen in the horse suit, and you can keep your pity. I don't want yours any more than you want mine.
Duly noted. I'll be in touch.
I ignored my bruised feelings and tried to get back to the case. Maybe being in a church had made me extra sensitive. I generally avoided them, nothing jump scares like a pipe organ, but the real reason is, when I'm in a church, I always feel like death is hanging in the air. When I'm on a case, I stick to the facts, and woo-woo stuff ain't facts. At least, not for me. I'm not sure what I believe, but part-time detective tip number 18, you can't convict the supernatural. But for some people, the supernatural is natural. Before St. Benedict's had converted to bottomless mimosas and Texas toast, its God-fearing congregation had eaten flesh and drunk blood. They've always had men in dresses. Some things never go out of style. As I walked to the bus stop, an unusual house caught my eye. It looked like some half-assed arson, but this was just the paint job. Crow-colored streaks of smoky black. Perched on the highest point of its dark wooden shingles was a weather vane in the shape of a bat.
That's the old DePena estate. People say it's the most haunted place in town, and that the authorette who lives there has a remarkable story.
I used to think your expository tone was an affectation, but you really can't speak any other way, can you?
Nobody's perfect, Brenda.
The DePena estate.
Oh, and Brenda, go easy on him. He's just trying to tell a good story.
Oh, God, I'm doing it again. I deprive myself of pleasure because I don't think I deserve it. Won't you forgive me, Charles?
Of course. Let today be the first page of a new chapter in the book of our love.
Part-time detective tip number 14, take a clue, leave a clue. I approached the DePena estate, took the hand-shaped door knocker in my own, and slammed it against the metal plate. Part-time detective case note number 23, I'm speaking to an author who grew up in a haunted house. Hi, could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Aurora Stewart de Pena, and I'm an author who grew up in a haunted house.
Aurora, what's your first memory of the paranormal?
My first memory of the paranormal was reflected through my mom's eyes. As I said, we grew up in a haunted house. That haunted house was in Stratford, Ontario. And I remember seeing a man on the phone at the end of our hallway and coming into the kitchen to ask my mom who the man was, and her being really upset that not only was there no man in the hallway, but there was no phone in the hallway. There was like a wooden plate for like a 19th century phone. No way a child of the 80s could have known what that was. But I remember her being panicked and worried about that. So I guess that was my first memory of the paranormal.
Wow. Okay, so did she immediately contextualize that as paranormal, or did she kind of soothe you and send you on your way?
No, she was immediately freaked out. I don't think she contextualized it as paranormal, but I read that there was like something weird happening for her in that moment.
Okay, and when were you, if you can remember, first conscious, sort of in yourself that maybe you were living in a haunted house or experiencing some contact with the undead? Or what would they be? The dead?
Yeah, dead, undead. We don't know, do we? What happens after we die?
I don't.
I'm trying to find out. I think assessing the reactions of my parents and their sort of visceral fear and anxiety at managing a sequence of events in our house allowed me to sit in a certainty that we were with entities that didn't belong in our realm. I was easily spooked as a kid and I had night terrors as well. So I always felt like I lived in step with something that wasn't the same as what was going on in the conscious world.
I mean, it sounds like your folks contextualize that as something scary, and night terrors certainly sound terrifying. But was then your sort of initial impression all ghosts are out to get me? How did you feel about them?
I didn't feel like they were out to get me, but I did feel like they weren't trying to take care of me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Not benevolent, not like Casper.
No, but you know what, like you get that feeling. I can't remember where I heard this, but someone was talking about the outdoors as not necessarily being a caring place. You're just in a place where there are a bunch of elements that might impact you. And to be in a house with a ghost or something supernatural happening, it didn't feel like it was necessarily targeting me, but it didn't necessarily feel like it was trying to do me any good either.
Aurora pulled out a magazine article she'd written, which included an interview with her parents. She held it up for me to read, which I did while she stared slack-jawed at the rafters. So one thing that I read that your father said was that children are kind of more open to experience with ghosts, and it's not that you lose the ability to contact them, but you sort of close off to maybe those opportunities, and your sort of reasoning brain discounts them. So do you really think that certain people, certain ages, whatever, are more susceptible to connection with the other side?
Well, we don't know, do we? Because I feel like a very useful skill that we have as human beings is to organize our experiences over the course of a day into something that we understand. So there may be things that we are managing that we write off as being like a feature of an old house or a weather event or something that might be evidence of the paranormal if we were to look at it another way.
Do you then, as a child who had those connections, do you think that you are more likely to write those things off now, being a grown up with sort of more understanding of the world, or because they were part of your life so early on at a more vulnerable stage, do you think you've stayed open?
Yeah, Trevor, I don't want I don't want to live in a house with a ghost. I'm for sure more likely to be like, oh, I guess there's raccoons in the walls. Very likely in Toronto. I would prefer to live in a non-haunted place, but I grew up with parents who believed so heavily in ghosts. That's always my first instinct to be like, uh-oh, there's a banshee in the home.
Right. Ghosts again instead of raccoon.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so then on the flip side, do you think the dead are more... First of all, maybe a baseline question. Do you still believe in ghosts?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe, okay, let me clarify that. When I say ghosts, I believe that we don't know what we're talking about when we say ghosts, and to write off something as definitively not existing when so many people have had an experience that they label ghosts seems dismissive and kind of useless.
Yeah, that makes sense. And even the term, I mean, ghosts, it sounds so childish. I feel like it's saying boobs.
Yeah.
Where you're like, we could use another term, but sort of that's like common parlance to say that. I mean, it sounds not like encapsulates the real thing that's going on.
Like, let's be honest, ghosts are the best case scenario because no one wants death to be the final thing and the last time you see anyone. And so I think a ghost is the most hopeful application of that phenomena. Like, we'll call it a ghost because we want ourselves to have spirits and we want the spirits of those we love to continue. What that actually is, from our standpoint, in our experience, that's the most sort of like that's what we want to be true. Whatever that phenomena is that people are experiencing that they're writing off as ghost, we don't know.
So as usual, like everything else, are ghosts just a projection of my ego?
I think that ghosts are like a projection of your grief and your desire not to die.
Oh, okay. To go back to something I was going to ask before, we talked about maybe human interest in contacting the dead. On the flip side, do you think the dead are more interested in contacting certain types of people? Or is it just like a scatter shot? They're just prank calling till someone picks up. Like, was that person on the telephone there to see you?
No, I don't think so. I think that first of all, like I was saying before, we hope it's the dead. Whatever the phenomena that we're classifying as ghosts is just the unknown, and we're calling it ghosts because we like to believe that we have spirits, and those little spirits go on and, like, in a transparent way, carry on some of their duties and ambitions and goals and hopes and dreams. But I think that for the first little while anyway, being dead must be quite a shock. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the dead want.
Maybe I should speak to a ghost, really, to get some answers here.
I mean, yeah, if you can get one.
Maybe that guy on the phone. So, I'm not trying to ask you the same question and again, but one of humans' main reasons to contact the dead is to get answers. Like, where did you go? Or what's it like over there? Or why can't I find the car keys? If they do, why do you think the dead would want to contact or connect with the living?
In my best estimation, because they miss us. I think I'm worried that this conversation gets like into some less fun territory, but we live our lives doing everything we can to connect with each other. Those connections are forged and at the core of so many of our identities, and then they are extinguished by death. And I would believe that if we take for granted that a ghost is the spirit of a dead person, I think that they would try to retain contact to keep that connection alive. I think it's all about retaining the connections that have been so important to us and that we spent our whole lives trying to make.
Wow. So, I mean, who knows what's over there, but it sounds like it has the potential to be extremely disorienting and lonely. So maybe they all just have mega FOMO and are like, what am I missing? And can I be a part of it?
Yeah, don't you think?
I mean, I feel that when I'm alive, so I can't imagine how it would go anywhere but down.
Yeah, yeah. Like in terms of random spirits of the dead, just like planting themselves in your house or making their footsteps heard or making calls in your hallway or whatever.
Yeah.
I think like a reasonable assumption is just that they're used to doing that stuff.
So if that was true and that ghost is just doing something that was familiar to them, what thing would you do as a ghost?
Yeah, I'd be such a boring ghost. I'd be on Zoom calls. I have a little walking pad. I feel like the ghost of me would be like watching the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders documentary, getting her steps in, and people would be like, oh.
A child, right, in the future, far, far ahead, because you will live a much longer life,
Yeah.
will turn in the hallway and see you on that walking pad.
Yeah, there's like a ghost on her cell phone in an Aritzia outfit.
I love that. If we can send one message to the future, I think that's a worthy one.
Yeah, for sure. This is what it was like. This is what it was to be human.
If you could spend 7 minutes in heaven with any ghost, who would it be?
With like any dead person? Or like a famous ghost?
Well, their ghost, not their corpse.
But like, do I have to pick like a famous ghost or can I just pick a dead person?
Well, yeah, if we extend the logic that every dead person has a ghost and ghosts aren't sort of assigned,
Right,
yes,
okay.
it could be, yeah, any historical crush, or it could be a fictional ghost. I know I keep bringing up Casper, but that's my own business.
I'm gonna go with like Jesus just because I have a lot of I'm gonna go with like the literal Holy Spirit. I have like bones to pick. I have like items to clear up. I think there's like some things you should know about how his words are being carried out. So I feel like if I could get 7 minutes just to like set the tracks straight, if he like exerts the power that we think he does, he could clear a lot of stuff up for us. So that would be good. I think like a holy figure in general would be good. Like anyone who wields this power.
I really like that you were sort of more poetic about 7 minutes in heaven and took it out of its sort of basement slumber party context.
Right. Sorry. You did literally ask me 7 minutes in heaven, and I was like, I clarify things with
I love the bait and switch. I'm curious about what your slumber parties were like as a kid, but I love that you get Jesus in a closet and he's like getting ready for the butterfly kiss. And then you're just like, let's talk Exodus book 2.
No, I'd be like, here's what people are doing in your name. Do you agree? Yes or no?
Right. And he'll be like, are we going to make out or?
And I'd be like, yes, we are. But much like with every relationship, I have to make sure that our values are aligned.
100%. I love this.
He was super cute. Jesus was hot. So it's not like I wouldn't. I don't like if he's
Please.
down, I'm down.
Who among us would kick Jesus out of bed? Am I right? It's the one thing we can all agree on as a species.
Trevor, I feel like you wanted to have more of a fun conversation, and I was like really wanting to get into the nature of death.
I'm always game for the nature of death. I'm here for the facts. I'm here for justice. And I appreciate you taking the gloves off, so to speak, and really going there. Do you think ghosts have sexualities? Over to you.
Yeah, ghosts have sexualities because we have sexualities and ghosts are us. I think like, why take away the most fun part of yourself just because you're dead, right?
So Jesus is still gay.
Yeah.
As a ghost.
And he still doesn't, which is why he doesn't want to make out with me in that 7 minutes in heaven closet. Shame. But okay, so both of my parents are really prone to believing in ghosts. As a child with night terrors, which by the way is like a medical condition, it just means you don't hit REM sleep. So I still have them and I still wake up like viscerally afraid, but as an adult, I'm like, I didn't get into a deep sleep. That's why I have these nightmares. But both of my parents are hyper spiritual, superstitious. They're both actors, or sorry, my mom's an actor and my dad's a sound designer. They both work in the theater. And so they really never were like, oh, it's not a monster under your bed. This is what's happening. They were like, uh-oh, there's a ghost in the house. There's a monster under the bed. We're fucked.
That must have felt a bit chaotic as a child because I think the party line was just tell your kid it's not a monster.
Never happened for me. Sometimes they would check and see if there were monsters, but they would like never discount my lived experience, which I understand as a human approach, but as like a 5-year-old, I think it is useful to be like, hey, baseline, there aren't ghosts.
Right.
There aren't monsters, but I never got that. I was like, there are ghosts, there are monsters, they just don't happen to be here right now. And in the case of that house, they were there. So there was a ghost there, and both of my parents believed, and they're friends. So to grow up in an atmosphere where the belief was as strong as the belief in like the kitchen table, it's like really,
Yeah.
we talk about it in therapy.
If it's any consolation, I had the exact same experience, but it was through the lens of fundamentalist Catholicism.
I was a Catholic too, and I think that this is part and parcel because you have to believe in things that don't, in disembodied things, if you're gonna toe that line. Like you're just going to have to.
It's dark.
Yeah, it's dark. It makes for kind of a fun, mysterious childhood. You definitely have like deities that you can pray to like impact things on earth, but it, you know, it doesn't necessarily leave you with the most sort of like settled understanding of the material world. You're like, well, maybe, I don't know. But the one thing my mom really believed about that ghost was that he was brokenhearted because she did some research about the house. She found out that there was an old man that had lived there.
Note to self, like the old man at the library with a dead dog.
And that he had a mail order bride, but she left him. And so we built together this story that he was this very brokenhearted, lonely man who just wanted to connect with people. And so
he was just eternally calling a switchboard in Eastern Europe, trying to figure out how the mail got misdirected. Where's my wife?
Something like that. But apparently this like woman had shown up. Imagine, first of all, being a mail order bride.
I also always, and I know this is not how it worked, picture them in like 2x6 wooden crate.
Yeah.
Like they were shipped over like dolls. That's not how it works.
And then you open them and they step out and they're like, hi. Oh, actually, no.
This put me back in the straw. I am out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm going back to wherever I'm from and I don't want to marry you. But the idea that my mom had about this guy was that he was brokenhearted, which was why he was circulating perpetually in the house. He wanted to be seen. He wanted to be felt. And that was the idea. So when you think about like, do ghosts have sexualities? Sure. And they have like lonelinesses and they have anxieties and they have yearnings and they have all of the things that a person has. And so you carry your emotional body without your physical body into the next life, I think was the perception of the ghost in the house.
That is amazing. Do you remember, how did you feel about this man on the phone? Like, apart from the scariness, like, on a scale of hot or not, what would you give him?
Kind of looked like Mr. Burns. So, like, pretty hot.
Oh, he was old.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, like, kind of shaped like a capital C, posture-wise. Like a St. Francis of Assisi hairstyle with the
You know what, Trevor? Of the religious figures, that is who I would make out with. St. Francis of Assisi was super hot.
Animals loved him. That's always a good indicator.
Animals loved him. He was very humble. Apparently he like disavowed all his silks and fineries to live a life of service. Like that's who I would go for today.
I love that. I wish that for you.
Constantly surrounded by a bird.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like the Snow White syndrome. It's like animals and kids know when a dog growls at someone or a kid won't let someone pick them up or whatever. That's how you know something's wrong with someone. So if animals and kids are going to them, and St. Francis had both, they're either big trouble or man of your dreams.
He chose that haircut too. So I have to think he did it to downplay his natural good looks. Also, if you've been to Assisi, people there are cute. I think he was probably a pretty handsome guy.
Have you been to Assisi?
Yeah, I have. I've seen his tomb. He's
not for sexual reasons, I assure you.
Yeah, that's who my 7 minutes in heaven is going to be with.
St. Francis of Assisi.
Yeah, it's St. Francis of Assisi, because I think we'd have like a spiritual connection. Also, I was born on his feast day, so I think
Oh, wow.
I think he'd like me. Yeah.
I think your biggest challenge in that would not be getting him in the closet, but would be keeping like a live deer out of the closet while you were making out. Keep the birds out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. They can come.
I turned my head in the direction of the ringing, but there was only a bare wall. Is that a ghost?
Well, we don't know, do we?
Well, I really appreciate you opening up.
All right. Okay. I'll talk to you soon.
After my conversation with Aurora, my whole body felt cold. Churches, haunted houses, the glistening pat of St. Francis. Too much woo-woo for one morning. I just needed to walk it off. But when I got to the bus stop, I still hadn't warmed up.
Ah, my most demanding passenger. Hey, you don't look so hot. I mean, apart from the legs, that is.
Excuse me, and thank you, I was a child gymnast. In only a few blocks, I'd gone from bad to worse. I blamed my creeping nausea on the bouncing bus, but couldn't explain my clammy hands, itchy neck, and what was quickly becoming a pressure headache. Maybe it wasn't the woo-woo. Maybe I was coming down with something. In an effort to avoid recalling my breakfast onto the shoes of my fellow passengers, I got off the bus at the pharmacy. The line snaked through the aisles. Looks like everyone decided to come down with something on the same day. I browsed the shelves on my own, but nothing seemed to match my symptoms, and I didn't want to mix meds. Part-time detective tip number 35. Take your pills like you track your perps, one at a time. Ruby, can you find me some kind of pharmacist who takes phone consultations? I think I'm coming down with something.
It certainly isn't the ability to do your own research.
I'm paying you to help, not add to my headache.
You're not paying me at all, Detective Campbell. Hang on while I find a pharmacist.
I added sore feelings to my growing list of symptoms. Maybe Ruby was right. Humans do take things too personally. But is that a liability or the only thing that actually...
Looks like everyone's got a bug today. The nearest available pharmacist I could find is in New Orleans. Connecting you now.
I wasn't sure if it would violate doctor-patient confidentiality, but I flicked on my recorder. Wait a minute. Ah, shoot! My tape's about to run out. Ruby, hold the call.
I can't. It's already dialing.
Ah, this pressure headache has thrown off my game.
Just hang up. We'll call someone else.
No, it's too late. Part-time detective tip number 21. Never uninitiate an interview.
Sometimes I think you might be in a detective cult. Are you in a detective cult?
Excuse me, does anyone have a blank tape?
What's a tape?
Ah, motherfucker.
To be continued. The tape has ended. Please insert the next tape and press play now.
Queerial is presented by You Made Me Queer and the Sonar Network. It's written, produced, and sound designed by me, Trevor Campbell, editing by me and Harlow Castillo, and mixing exclusively by Harlow. This episode featured Alex Markman, Hilary Yoss, Aurora Stewart-De Pena, Nug Nargang, Stephanie Malik, Franny McKay Bennett, and a text-to-speech avatar named Kimberly as Ruby 3000. You can learn more about them and their work in our show notes. Our theme and all of our music is by Critty. For more for work, check out lavenderbruisers.bandcamp.com. You can find extra clues and case notes for this episode at trevorcampbell.ca/Queerial or on Instagram at YouMadeMeQueer. If you want to stay on the case, subscribe to Queerial in your favorite podcast app. Until next time, be careful out there. Things are getting queer.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Sonar Network.